That always gives me pause when it gives me that message. It sounds like it's a spy movie. Thanks, Marcos. So if other folks could put their name and affiliation into the chat, that would be terrific. All right, so Miguel, I'm going to turn this over to you like we did at the Santa Fe meeting. Just as a reminder, as I said it earlier, for folks who missed it, we have done 4 meetings. We started in Taos and Espanola, and then Los Alamos and Santa Fe. And it's been mixed about the number of people, but we've gotten some great information. We did decide to do 2 virtual meetings because several times folks said, oh, I'm so sorry I missed that meeting. It was on the wrong day or I couldn't do it. So we're hoping that we've got these 2 set up today and tomorrow, that it'll give folks another opportunity. And you're welcome to send the links that are on the website for other folks to tune into the virtual meeting. So we've got tonight and then tomorrow night. So let's start with a PowerPoint to give you an overview of the strategic plan that we're working on. And Miguel, I'll turn it over to you.
Sounds good. Let's see.
And we decided, Jim clarified that we're looking at the road near Dixon.
There we go. Yep. All right. Yeah. So we'll just go ahead and go through this PowerPoint presentation and just kind of give you a background of the project and what's going on. And let's see. All right. So with the long range strategic plan, NCRTD has selected FHU and Rosemary Romero consulting to update the long range strategic plan. This is it's a plan that gets updated every 7 years, and this is actually the second plan, the long range plan for NCRTD. And so with the first plan, that was 7 years ago, and of course we already know in the past 3 years that a lot has changed, and especially for transit, that the timing of this long range plan kind of just it was coincidental with the pandemic going on. And so one of the strategies and thoughts is how to restore ridership back to pre-pandemic levels. We all know that ridership across the board, not just with the RTD, but like everywhere across the country, ridership took a hit. And so every agency is trying to figure out how to bring back that ridership. So with the RTD, they had a goal of trying to get 1 million passengers per fiscal year. And they were close at one point in 2019 when they got 750,000 riders. And the trajectory from the history of that has gone up tremendously from, I think it was even like 150,000. And so year after year, it's been going up. Unfortunately, 2020 happened, and now we have to figure out what we're going to do and how to bring those riders back. Transit service, let's see. So another purpose is transit service levels and modes to be appropriately sized for post-pandemic. And again, we are still going to keep the goal of exceeding 1 million passengers. And so another thing too is enhancing existing and developing new mobility concepts to increase performance efficiency, passenger flexibility, and ease of access. And so that's part of this plan. We are reaching out to see what kind of thoughts are out there, what kind of suggestions folks have with RTD being flexible on the services that they provide and what RTD can do. And again, this is a long range plan, so we're seeking to plan for about the next 20 years. I know that's probably far-fetched and long distance away, but that is the goal. And that's 20 years can go by pretty fast for some of us. And so looking at our long-range strategic plan, the project tasks, we have, there are several pieces to the plan that have been set out in this project. So the first one was the existing conditions assessment. That was just to detail the information of what services RTD provides and where they're located and what facilities and vehicles that they have, just who they are and what they do. That part has been completed and has been approved by the staff for moving on to the board approval. So from there, we are having our public meetings And as Rosemary said, that this is our 5th meeting, and these virtual meetings are just have been suggested for this project because with COVID and folks who may be a little more cautious about wanting to be present at a public meeting, we thought it'd be best to provide a couple of these virtual meetings as well. So right now, after this week, it'll complete the public meetings portion of this plan. And from the feedback from these public meetings, we will move on to the service expansion evaluation part of this plan. So we want to get feedback from the public to be able to determine what that expansion evaluation is going to look like, as well as kind of feed into these other portions of the plan. So from there, from the expansion evaluation, we'll look at facilities and a capital investment plan. That's just to determine what facilities the RTD needs, such as like a maintenance facility or a transfer center or some other capital investment, whether that's like infrastructure for EV buses, purchasing EV buses, and bus stop improvements and all that sort of details. From there, we'll go ahead and move to the updating the district's financial plan. This is, of course, the money in and money out, where the money should come from, what kind of resources are out there, make those recommendations and suggestions of where to, what sort of resources money should be coming from, and then of course where that money should be going to, what kind of investments, what kind of facilities, and what kind of services that those funds should be providing. And then the last portion is the prioritization and implementation strategies, and again, this is part of where the public meetings comes into play, where we will take the feedback from the public and from you folks about what should be prioritized. So far, we've heard common themes from these public meetings. And so, those common themes will kind of lead the direction of what should be prioritized, whether that's bus facilities or a new route or maybe extended service. So those are things that we're looking at for that section. And then once this is all completed, we will put it into a final report, and this will be presented in front of the board for final approval. So, and this is actually, I think it's the next slide. It's an 8-month project. Yep, there it is. We started back in the middle of May. And so we've gone through June and July, and we're right here about August. Where are we at? August 22nd, is that where we're at? Yeah, so we're coming close to the end of the month, but, and we got a few more months, and the last few pieces or second half of that project timeline, the task timeline you saw on the last slide, we'll get moving on those. But this is just kind of the timeline of what this project looks like. We will be completed about early January if everything goes according to plan. And so far it is. We've had no issues so far. But yeah, we also are taking, I don't think I said this, but on the public meeting part, we have a project website as well, and we're taking feedback on the project website until the end of October. So that'll help feed into the other portions of this plan. So this one came up really fast. If anybody has any questions on any of that so far before we go into this one, I'll just go back over here.
Thank you.
Yeah. So let's see.
So I'm really glad to see Marcos on the call from the community college. And, when I worked out there many years ago, Marcos, one of the issues, because the community college is so far out, the issue of transportation is huge. And I know there's a lot of connectivity with the Santa Fe transit, but, a lot of folks coming from the north and then and from the south as well. We can't address much more than Edgewood for the services, but I know for the community college, the transportation was a big deal and part of their strategic plan as well. One of the things that we heard up in Taos, because UNM Taos, they really said they were out in force with their participants. So we got quite a bit of feedback from UNM folks about the connectivity of getting students into programs and the transit. So I think it depends where we're at. And in this one, I can't wait to hear, some of the things that you've been thinking about around transit and how to make it smoother, especially getting students back into school. So Marcos, I didn't mean to pick on you, but I'm just thinking that in terms of the community college that, you've probably got some great ideas on what else can be done to serve that kind of population who don't always have cars. So just priming the pump.
Yeah, and it's been good to hear like different, every town is different, every city,
Yep.
that RTD services, there are different needs. And so we're reaching out to the communities and want to hear back from the public, especially after COVID, what should RTD do? Where's the direction they should go? What should they focus on? Or, what are your needs in your community? What that are not being met? Also, I wanted to show, let me see if I can get this. In case for some folks, this is the, I don't know what's going on. There we go. So this is the service area for the NCRTD.
So it didn't come up, Miguel. So
is it not? Oh, let me see.
Yeah, maybe stop sharing that one and then pull it up because
pull up the other one. Yeah. There it is.
Okay.
All right, is it there?
Great. Thank you. Yep.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you. So right here, the blue boundary, of course, is the 4 counties that the NCRTD services. You can see Los Alamos, Santa Fe, Espanola, and Taos is over here as well. This is kind of just an inset of the Santa Fe area, so you can get a closer look. But yeah, the 4 counties are there. Also, another piece of this is that recently the NCRTD has been expanding service, and that's gone beyond the borders of these 4 counties. And as you can see, there's a couple towns over on the east side where Mora County is, and San Miguel County servicing Mora and Las Vegas. That's I think a route out there that the NCRTD has and operates, as well as towards the northwest where Farmington and Bloomfield are. There's a service that goes out there from the northwest area. So they're starting to expand it. And is this something that NCRTD should consider moving forward with, or should there be something different? This is what we're here to hear from you. Just provide your feedback on what the future looks like for these services. And for the communities as well. Should it continue expanding outward, or should it just kind of more beef up what it already has within the borders or within its boundaries? So,
and then we're going to go back to the questions, and let's, if folks can either raise their hands, it's just a small group, and you're welcome to either use the icon to raise your hand or just show me your hand. There's some questions that we're going to pose to you. I think it's the next slide. There we go. So, we're following a strategic planning model. Is what do you envision for the next 20 years? And it was interesting in Santa Fe, I will say that I heard for the first time unmanned vehicles, right? I thought, wait a minute, I don't think that's a good idea at all. But every idea is a good idea. Let me just say that. But it was interesting that people really were taking on 20 years from now. So any one of you that wants to answer that is, what do you envision 20 years from now? So we're just going to work our way down the questions because it sets a tempo for what we're trying to get to. Anyone? And if you don't answer, then I pick on you. I just want you to know. Jay?
I was going to unmute myself, and I don't know I want to wait for 20 years for this, but have you guys considered a micro transit type service where people can request transit like a Uber or Lyft on a vehicle, on an app?
Yeah.
Well, with this right now, at least with RTD, there's 2 call and ride services. One is in Taos and the other one is in Espanola, and they both have their limitations as well. So those are basically a door-to-door service. You can go ahead and call ahead. I think it's about 24 hours, and you can schedule a pickup and a drop-off, and they will, meet you at that time and pick you up where you're at and drop you off where you need to go. And those right now it's only 2 services. It's something that could be considered to expand or change the boundaries of those services, because they do have their boundaries of where they do service. And Jim?
Yeah, but I want to say, let me just add to this, is Jay, what I was hearing also was something I'd heard at other meetings was the connectivity of services. Like somebody said at a meeting, well, if you were in Italy, right? If you were in Italy, you could figure out how to get from, town to town and the services, and that there's a comprehensive way to figure out what all of the transit capacity is for you to tap into. So I think some of what I was hearing when you said Uber was, to me, that's part of a larger picture of connectivity of transit and the options that people can tap into. I hope I'm not putting words in your mouth, but that's some of what I heard.
Yeah, I agree with that too. That would be wonderful.
All right.
Did you have something to say, Jim? I saw your hand up was earlier.
Yeah, I was going to say we're actually planning to, we're going to be launching a limited kind of pilot microtransit service by the end of the year. We'll
Whoa.
initially begin in the areas where we currently have demand and paratransit service, and with plans to expand it beyond that.
Okay, that's perfect. I love to hear that.
in the
Excellent.
coming years.
All right. Ken, if you just joined us, if you could put your affiliation into the chat, I'm going to pick on you and pose the 20-year vision for you. And you'll have to unmute yourself. Okay, Marcos, you're next. You're on.
So I absolutely agree with having it like set up like an on-demand Uber service. And we're doing versions of that right now with the city of Santa Fe, where there is the on-demand service. I would also love to see, though, having more drivers well paid, because that is definitely a very challenging, tough, strenuous gig. And we're seeing a major shortage of drivers. And I think a big part of it is because the pay is still not quite where it needs to be for the amount of work that these drivers have to do day in and day out. So we're seeing overworked, overstressed drivers. And I'm hoping that the 20 years from now, we have a fleet of great sustainable vehicles with happy, well-paid drivers that are enough to cover our entire community. And we also have that on-demand service. But also, part of the challenge we're having in Santa Fe is because we have such a shortage of drivers, even with the on-demand service, it still ends up taking them to a midpoint spot. So for example, Santa Fe Community College, we have students who literally, if they had transportation, if they had their own car, it would take them all of 10 minutes to get to campus. But because of how the transportation is set up, it takes them literally, with the bus system, about 45 minutes to an hour. So it's just really, really tough. But that's what I would hope to see within the 20 years from now.
Hey, Marcos, let me ask you a quick question. Does the community college offer any like certificates for CDLs?
I'm sorry, Rosemary, say that again.
Does the community college offer any certificates or coursework for CDL?
We do not, and that has been one of my dreams, is for SFCC to offer CDL programs. I know that we get so many questions about that from folks around the community, because that's hot right now with CDL. And hopefully one day, but as of right now, we don't have that, and I haven't heard any talks for the immediate future.
Yep, and that'd be like a 20-year goal. Is to, I mean, it's grown so much, and I know that the college is good about addressing community needs. You know, a good example was the Early Childhood Center. If you're going to offer classwork in early childhood, then you've got to give kids a place to go for those parents in those classes. So CDLs I'm just planting the seed around, you know, a future coursework toward a CDL at the community college, because it's a great school.
Absolutely, Rosemary. Thank you.
Yeah. Let's see. Ken, I think you're unmuted now.
Yep. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay. So 20 years from now, wow. I foresee Edgewood itself probably being 4 times the size we are now. We're at 6,200 at the recent survey, census for population, and we are at a steady growth rate. There's a constant flow of new housing permits being requested, so I'm basing my calculations off of that. Edgewood is also spread out. We're over 64 square miles, and I mean, we stretch all, I mean, we're very elongated. We're long and kind of and narrow. Our biggest problems that we have is transportation, especially for our elderly community, and getting them just to get into, you know, in the town section of Edgewood. Also, the majority, because right now we don't have a lot of the medical facilities out here, which is something we're working on. I would like to see by 20 years to have us having our own urgent care facility out here that has 24/7 care. But right now we don't have that. So they have to rather go to Santa Fe or they have to go to Albuquerque.
Right.
Albuquerque is actually a little closer to us than Santa Fe.
Oh,
Yeah,
Yeah.
because all we got to do is jump across the mountain. We're in Albuquerque. So Presbyterian over at Caseman, which is on, I believe I want to say it's Wyoming Boulevard, is actually faster and closer for somebody to get to than to go into Santa Fe.
Good.
So transportation for both of those areas, going out to both of those areas are going to, you know, something we need. The other thing is setting up a transportation system within the town. I know right now we're not big enough to have a standard type transportation system, but I've been reading into and learning up on this, the micro transit systems.
Yep.
And that philosophy, that type of setup would be perfect for Edgewood, especially the way we're laid out. The other thing, within 20 years, I am pretty sure that Edgewood will eventually separate from the Moriarty Edgewood School District, and you'll have the Moriarty School District and you'll have the Edgewood School District. Right now, we're 75% of the Moriarty Edgewood School District. So we're not that far away from actually being able to make that separation. And that's going to create its own logistic issues for the town. Having our own high school, there's already a middle school in Edgewood, and we used to have an elementary school, but they closed it down, so they moved it into Moriarty. So
Good.
Those are, you know, just some of my visions of where I see Edgewood going in the next 20 years.
Great ideas. And then Miguel, toward the a little bit later on, maybe pulling up that one chart of the existing conditions would be good, just to see what the populations are for everybody. We'll pull that up in a minute, but I think that would be helpful information for everyone. When I looked at it, it was for the tribes, you know, like which ones had grown and which ones had shrunk. Because sometimes you think something's grown and then it's actually shrunk, and it goes by the census. I think it's by census numbers, right?
Yeah, it's usually by census. Yeah.
Okay, so we'll pull that up in just a bit. So then, important needs of your community, and whomever wants to jump in on this. And I've already heard a couple of things. You know, I heard, you know, like from Marcos, for example, I heard addressing the needs of students and not having as many stops for them, or, you know, figuring out what's a more efficient way to get them to classes so it doesn't take them many hours, or I'm stretching the story now, but, you know, it takes them a longer period of time to get somewhere. But think about that as the most important needs from your perspective. And I'll open it up again. And Jay, you're up at Lanel, so you've got your own system up there, but also you're part of the RTD. So thinking about, you know, what else, we heard some really cool things that Los Alamos does, you know, for entertainment when we were up there. Annette really made me want to move there, I have to say. When she was talking about you know, just getting people connected to the activities there. So anyway, from each of your own perspectives, or what are the most important needs of your community? Ken, I heard you say healthcare, you know, reaching good healthcare. So I'm just priming the pump here, but if you could give us more ideas, that'd be great.
You want more ideas from me?
Yeah, go for it.
So are you wanting more ideas on what I'm thinking about as far as the healthcare goes, or?
I know you mentioned that one. I think you kind of answered that second question, but if there's other things to add, that I think you had two that I heard was healthcare, you know, accessing healthcare. And right now it's through transit, but you're hoping someday in the future that you'd have your own healthcare closer. You know, kids getting to school is another important need, is getting kids to school on time. And you know, up in the north, I know that many schools from small, you know, kids from small areas trying to get to schools, like the tribes are another example. Is if they don't have their own school, they're getting kids to Espanola or to Milwaukee, they're getting their kids somewhere else. So, those are needs that a community has. So from your perspective in Edgewood, what do you think your community, what are some of the important ones besides the healthcare and access to healthcare and education?
Well, just being able to just get to any type of facility, like uh, all our shopping is located in the area of where 344 and Interstate 40 intersect. Because that's where Smith's is at. We have Walmart out there. We got our Harbor Freight. We got our Tractor Supply. There's a few more businesses that are coming out. Those are also where the restaurants for the town are located in that area. So once again, going back, and I keep focusing on the elderly and disabled citizens out here in the community. A lot of them, they're pretty much, unless somebody comes and gets them, they're pretty much locked down to their house. That they can't get out because of, like I said, we are so spread out. Shoot, the average property out here is 7 or 8 acres in size.
Right.
And we are starting to build more condensed housing areas on like 1 acre lots. That is starting to happen. We don't have any type of, like apartment complexes or anything. We don't have any of that in Edgewood. That is something else that we're possibly looking at. But once again, once you have a setup like that, there needs to be alternative ways besides getting into your own car to drive out and get to different facilities.
Yep. Thank you. Jay.
Yeah, I was just going to say that, from a lab perspective, we're really concerned about getting our employees to work, obviously. And we're really going to be continuing to grow over the next few years. And so we're really going to be encouraging our employees to make that shift from driving alone to using alternative transportation. We need to be sure that those alternative transportation options are there. And so we are going to be working with NCRTD and the other transit agencies on a transportation study coming up to look at some of these issues. But I'm really thinking about certainly the commute times are one thing to get people to and from work during those times, but then also adding service in other times of the day that could be a little bit more frequent in case people need to get home in case of emergency, or they're only working half of a day. And then those type of things are preventing people from using alternative transportation and transit. And so extending that service possibly from Espanola to the lab where the transit center is right now, at least, would be a great service. And then also, what about getting people from, we don't have a route, I don't believe that does this right now, from Lanall, is to, in the middle of the day, getting people from Los Alamos to Santa Fe or back. So that midday service, I think, is important to have, maybe not as frequent as the commute times, but I think that it's good to have the service throughout the day.
Yep. One of the things that we heard when we were up there was Los Alamos doesn't have enough housing, for example. So you've got your employees are all using either cars or transit. They're figuring out how to get there. But I think what you hit on is if they have to go for an emergency or appointment somewhere else in the middle of the day or at an odd time, they have to drive their car in order to make that appointment because there's not the services there.
Right.
So there's a couple of things, particularly for Los Alamos, is you've got a great workforce, but it's getting them to work, right? And it's mostly from the north. We heard it from the Pueblos, who many are employed at Lanall. They come from as far north as Cuesta, I think.
Yeah, they come from pretty far away. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Anybody else on this question? And then let me just switch then. And you're welcome to put anything into the chat since it's recording. We'll have that method also. So the RTD has been around since 2008 when the tax was passed. It actually was started a little bit before then, but the tax went into out for voting by the 4 counties, and it was complicated because you had to have 4 counties voting on it and getting it on their agendas and then getting it passed. But it was 2008, and at that time it was 1/8 of 1%. And Jim, I tell you, it was just fantastic to finally have that sunset taken out of it. The sunset clause of the tax. So that was a big plus of what I think has worked well. But from your perspective in each of your communities, what has worked well? because I know we can come up with a lot of the negative, but how about what's worked well? Ken?
Well, gee. Since I've been in office, and that's been since January, there has been, positive comments about the bus route that they do have going into Santa Fe. But that's about the limit of it. The big problem with Edgewood, because we're the most southern tip of Santa Fe County, and we tend to get forgotten about down here sometimes.
It's true. I mean, you're way out there, and I know when I was on city council, and we're in Santa Fe County. You're in Santa Fe County, right? And it's like, wait, we're in Santa Fe County too. But and it's hard. I know we can all go to the what can be improved, but there are some things that have worked well, and it's just COVID did a number on reducing routes. That's what can be improved, and that's what this study is about, is getting the ridership back up to 1 million plus more. But we heard a couple of things that had worked well for folks, and I think Jay may have hit on a couple of those things that worked well. Is connecting to they have atomic transit up there, and I think there's some connectivity there. So, when there's been opportunities to link with other services, we heard it in Taos. One woman, there's a couple of folks up in Taos that said, well, I only use public transit. They were elderly people. And to me, anybody over 50 is elderly. I mean, that's where I'm at, right? They were talking about the challenge of folks who did not have cars, were older citizens, and trying to figure out how to get from, I think from Taos, a little bit further north from Taos, to Albuquerque. And what they thought had worked pretty well had been some of that connectivity of getting from north of Taos to Santa Fe to catch Rail Runner. And it wasn't always perfect, but many felt that it was working well and could be improved. That was, it's one of those, what worked well and what can be improved. But they did feel that there was that it worked for them. It took some effort, but I just recall the two folks that really did not have cars and try to figure it out, and it could be improved for sure. But that connectivity worked okay, worked well, but had to definitely be improved to get to. If you're catching a plane in Albuquerque, you want to make sure that the transit is working perfect. So, and maybe there's not as many of the what worked well, but if you have any, feel free to, from your experiences of what's worked well. Marcos, anything from you on that, from your experiences of what's worked well?
Absolutely. I mean, it gives students the opportunity, and again, just putting on my Santa Fe Community College hat, it makes our campus much more accessible than it ever has before, because we're a commuter school. We don't have housing. But yet we do have programs that are very attractive to a number of folks who don't live in Santa Fe. So this absolutely gives these individuals the opportunity to attend Santa Fe. If transportation is an issue, they can take the Rail Runner, they can get off at the nearest station, and then a shuttle picks them up and takes them right to SFCC. And as a result of that, especially talking pre-pandemic numbers, we saw a jump in students who don't live in the Santa Fe area. So absolutely, there have been some things that have worked well and have benefited us directly.
Fantastic. Anybody else want to add? Okay, well, then let's go to the one there's gonna be more, I can tell. What can be improved? And I heard a couple of things earlier. Jay, was that you?
Yeah, I'll just jump in real quick, and I'll just say that, again, I'm speaking from a lab perspective, but from this area, but our employees are choice commuters, so they're choice riders. And so what is it going to take them to get to ride transit? It needs to be competitive to drive in a car, or faster than it currently takes. So I think time is probably the biggest concern I keep hearing about, is why people are not riding transit, is because of the time it takes.
Yep, absolutely.
Well, with a question on that, with the lab, has there been any work with any agency or service to have maybe like a park and ride spot for folks in Santa Fe to all drive to catch a singular bus, or is it kind of complicated? I don't know if there's like shift hours at the lab where folks come in at 7, folks come in at 8, folks come in at 9.
It does vary a little bit on shifts, but overall, I mean, it's between 5:30 a.m. and 8:30 a.m. And so we have that main commute time when people are arriving and the main commute time when people are leaving. But you hit on something. That's something that we are studying, is to actually have park and ride site lots at certain locations and have either direct shuttle service from those locations to get people to work, working with either transit agencies, or is it possible that we work with our, have our own chartered service? So those are things that we're looking at in our transportation study with the transit agencies.
Okay, great, thank you.
Ken, what can be improved?
Well, the amount of options available to be able to get to different locations, rather it be Santa Fe or Albuquerque. Because like I said, half the people I talk to, they travel to Santa Fe. The other half I talk to, they travel to Albuquerque. And that's the inherent problem of being basically almost equal distance between two major metropolitans.
Right.
But the big thing though is inner city travel. I hate using the word city because nobody likes calling Edgewood a city. Even the people out here don't want to call us a city. We're a town, we're not a city. And I'm being constantly reminded of that, but city's pretty much a universal term. But inner transportation, and that's why when I started learning about that microsystem, I said, I mean, that would be so perfect for us out here.
Yeah.
And if we can, if there's a way that we can set up a test program and have it in place by the November election cycle, so people can use it to get down to the polls to vote, that would give us a pretty good idea on how well it would be used and how big it would have to be.
The RTD is known for doing those kind of testing out of routes. The many years ago, I think the route from Santa Fe to the ski basin was a test. And then it got popular because people were taking their bikes up there and then riding their bikes down, or skiing. And so that was a test. And Jim, you could answer it better than I can, but it seemed that it grew, and then we heard that there was additional racks that were put on. So it would be good to test out some of these routes to see how popular they can be, and then advertise them, big time advertising for folks to use them. But I think, Ken, your example of getting folks to vote is a great way to test out something.
I think early voting starts in October, so.
Yeah.
The mountain trail route very much was continued to expand based on the popularity and the ridership on the route. Initially, it began as a winter-only service. Then we began providing limited service for a few months during the summertime, and then it went to year-round. Another good example is Chama, where we started out with two days a week, expanded to 3 days a week, and now it's 5 days a week. Ken, one thing I will mention, during the pandemic, when the state offices were pretty much closed down, the Edgewood route went on suspension, and we actually offered a demand service within the town of Edgewood that made us realize that it would be very viable for us to offer that type of service in the future. And it is something we're looking to do hopefully sooner rather than later. Right now, one of the biggest things holding that back is the staffing shortage, the driver shortages. But demand service, which would ultimately expand into a microtransit type of service for Edgewood, is definitely something that's in the docket.
And I mean, I'm going to move on to that last question is, and from your perspective, what's the priority right now? Is it like elderly? Is it kids? Is it more drivers. I mean, whatever it is, this is the wish list of priorities. And thinking about it like right now, what would work really great. And then I think then later on is probably in that 20-year range, but maybe 5 years from now. Ken?
Yeah, the big priority right now would be for the elderly and disabled community.
Mhm.
The bus system we've got right now, getting the kids to school, works pretty good. I mean, because they're busing all the elementary school and the high school students from Edgewood to Moriarty. There's quite a few times they're getting to class late because that's a good trek.
Mhm.
To be able to, gather up all the kiddos and get them to their, the right spots. But the thing, but they're getting to class. So,
Yeah.
but the elderly communities, like I said, they have, specific medical needs, but they don't want to leave their home out here. I've had a few that have moved out because of medical reasons, and they just hated it. They were totally dismayed and upset that they had to move out of Edgewood into Albuquerque just so they can get closer and have access to medical facilities.
Yeah.
So the transportation for that community, that part of the community is pretty high in the list. And of course, trying to get better, medical facilities out in Edgewood. Because you think about it, on the east side of the mountain, Edgewood itself is 6,200, but if you include everybody and all the small communities around us, you're around 45,000 people.
Oh, that's significant, actually. That's bigger than other, like, I think it's bigger than Espanola.
Because that's taking in
Moriarty.
Moriarty, also going up to Paco,
Mhm.
Sandia Park,
Mhm.
the Crest, all those neighborhoods up there along 14. That's all considered the East Mountains, and the population is pretty good. Also going far, reaching out to Stanley would be the opposite ends. Even though Stanley's not very big, but still, that's population that falls into the count.
Yep. Hey, Jim, is there a route into Madrid and Cerrillos? I mean, that's on the north end of what Ken is talking about, but I didn't see that on the routes that are offered.
Turquoise Trail route goes
Okay.
From the south side of Santa Fe down Highway 14 through Cerrillos and Madrid. We did do a test pilot extension to Golden, but it saw no ridership at all. So
Yeah. Well, and for those
Golden
two,
is on the north end of that.
yeah, it is on the north end. I imagine it's a population issue. I mean, if people are going to school, Madrid and Golden and Cerrillos is an older population. So Marcos isn't going to get those kids, or aren't go up from those areas. Is my guess. I'm not demeaning it in any way. I just don't think they're going to come from those smaller alternative villages. All right, Marcos, what's a priority for you right now?
I 100% agree with Ken. I think if we're talking about a specific population, it's most definitely our elderly and our disabled communities.
Yeah.
For all the reasons that Ken said, and also too, we do have a large number of non-traditional age students who do take classes at Santa Fe Community College. So I'm thinking about folks who need to get to their doctor, but also want to take a class or want to go shopping. And when you're on a fixed income, this is the only means of transportation that many of these folks have. So I 100% agree that our disabled and elderly communities are a top priority right now.
Fantastic. All right. We are that's the end of our questions, but I'm going to plant the seed for y'all is, I'm hoping that this plan will link into other plans. Everybody's got a plan, right? And state agencies are notorious for their plans, but the outdoor education, Mexico Outdoor Education Department, they're really big on getting people connected to the outdoors. And there's money that's available, that's more money available in the last 2 years for that agency to connect folks. And in the statewide comprehensive outdoor recreation plan, transit really came to the forefront in those focus groups about getting people in general, not just kids, people, to get connected to the outdoors. And they've been given a chunk of money to make that happen. So I'm hoping that more people take advantage of it, you know, whether it's through an orienteering class at the community college that they get outdoors and get credit for, or interns getting outdoors to Los Alamos or heading down to Edgewood. I mean, I just see there's some, I'm that girl. I see the connections, and I want to make them a reality. And so I'm just planting that seed about the outdoor education money that's come into the state from a variety of sources. It's a good time to connect those dots. As well as the Rio Grande Trail, which is more of a hiking trail, but you might be able to, you know, get somewhere up to Taos even, and then ride the bus back. Who knows? Dream big, right? That's what planning is about, is dreaming big. So let's talk about like some of the next steps that we're going to do. And Miguel went through those on the plan, but Miguel, go to that screen where it's got us. I think what we're going to be doing is synthesizing all of the information. If you can get other people to get onto the site and use the Q code, that'd be great. And contact information for us is noted here, but feel free to contact us or let other folks know that, you know, their opinion matters and that we want to reach out to them. We're going to do another virtual meeting tomorrow night, same time, same place, different link. But we're also thinking that we're going to, as a team, come together to figure out different ways to do some outreach. And one idea that Rocio and I talked about with Miguel was around pop-up events. Those seem to be really good in small areas. You know, Ken, I'm thinking of Edgewood in particular, pop-up events at a grocery store, you know, where people have to go for services. So we're trying to be creative on how we do our outreach, and it's not going to be the traditional ways to reach, particularly some of the elders in our communities. Is, you know, we're going to catch them at grocery stores. We're going to catch them when they're running errands somewhere or somebody's running errands. So we're trying to be creative in how we do that. So we're still doing and we'll continue to do more outreach. So stay tuned. The tribal ones are a little bit different for me, of meeting with the 8 Northern and with the different tribes, but that's why their plan is really specific to them. The funding is different and the use is different. So, but the plans will be parallel plans looked at together. And anything else from folks? If there was things in the chat, we'll take a look at. Really appreciate your time.
Rosemary, just one quick check.
Yeah.
Real quick. We have a phone number. I don't know if that's somebody else on here, but we have a phone number ending in 4518. I don't know if that is it, or is that Scott?
Yeah, I think
Okay.
Scott ended up getting on that way, which is
Got it. Okay, I just wanted to make sure it wasn't someone else.
yeah. Thank you.
So, okay, thank you. Thanks, Scott.
And Marcos, really, I love the little community. It's not little. I love that community college. I think it's done some great work. It's got great leadership, and you know, really appreciate Kathy Keith, who Jay works with, used to be up at the on the board of the community college. And if folks take a look at some of the classes offered, I think it's just fabulous. You know, it's a big shout out to SFCC.
Thank you.
All right, with that, we're going to call it a night.
The one more thing with that, there's the website. That's the project website right there, that NCRTD-LRSP.com. You can send folks there. There's a, you know, the project plan is there. It shows the steps of where we're at. There's a comment map as well. So if anybody has something, you know, they could point somewhere on the map, you know, say they live in Cuesta or Tres Piedras and they need to comment something about their town, they can do that and leave a comment, and we'll get that. Rocio is collecting all of those. She's put together that website very well. It looks great. And, you know, it's a great resource, especially if nobody was able to make it to any of these public meetings. Send it out, you know, just blast an email or something to all your folks, and anybody else that would be of interest to like have a comment on the services. So
Great.
That's available for everyone.
Great. I appreciate all the comments made. All right.
Yeah.
With that, we're going to end the meeting, and we are recording more for our purposes than anything else. So with that, I'll say good night. Enjoy the rain. We're getting some here. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.